Welcome everybody to another session of From the Field, coming from you from AWS, and well, I'm in Auckland, and today I have with me Sam. So Sam, how's it going, mate?
Yeah, it's going very well, mate. It's a fantastic to be on this show, Trevor. Thank you for having me on the show. It's absolutely an honor.
You look really dedicated, mate. It looks like you're in the office. Which office are you in?
I'm in Auckland office today.
In the Auckland office?
I'm always, yeah.
Oh.
Tell you what, the office is pretty full today. Yeah, I struggle to find a desk.
That's why I try and stay away, mate. It's at home I've got my own desk. I've got all my screens. I don't have to struggle to try and get a desk. Stay away from the COVID. It's a win-win-win.
Yeah.
So Sam, we've got you here today to talk to us about. You tell me what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, I'd be very interested to talk about data-driven organizations, data-driven everything, Trevor. I think it's really close to me. So I really appreciate this opportunity to feature this topic today. I'm really
Cool.
glad to bring it to our audience.
Well, I know all my customers. That's all. That's all they talk about, right? Data, data, data. So I'm sure it's going to be a really interesting topic to cover. For those that are watching, if you do have any questions for Sam or myself, do throw it into the chat. We'll be keeping an eye on the chat, monitoring it to make sure we get your questions answered. And down the bottom here, you can see our LinkedIn technical group. That's the New Zealand technical group. If you haven't joined already, just go over there and join the group. Both Sam and I. Well, actually, Sam, are you a member of the group yet, mate? Or have you joined up? Or
That's what actually I was pondering. I haven't joined the group yet, and this is my first my first time joining you on the show. Maybe I should give a bit of an intro as well
yeah, well,
for our
you
audience.
definitely want to join the group, and then we'll definitely give you the intro for it. But yes, so if you do have any questions, you'll find Sam and I over at that LinkedIn group, so you'll be able to contact us with connect with us there, as well as into the chat today. Okay, that's good stuff. Did the light just go off, Sam?
Yeah, that's. I thought I've been in here only for about a few minutes, and the lights are going off. Maybe
It's
they
the
don't
AI,
recognize
mate.
me.
Doesn't think you're human.
Yeah, they don't recognize me as a living being here. So, so yeah, you may have to excuse me if I have to wave my hand around to the lights whenever
Keep the
it goes
lights on.
off. Yeah,
No worries.
keep the
Um,
lights
uh,
on.
let's
Yeah.
let's see that introduction, Sam. So mate, obviously you're going to be talking about data driven everything. I guess be keen to understand what your background is, particularly in the data space.
Absolutely, Trey. I appreciate that. Maybe I'll start with my intro, who I am and where I come from, the background. And I'm Sam Kominuri from the field. I'm a senior solutions architect with AWS. I work with our enterprise customers in New Zealand to understand their business and technology goals, and then to help AWS technology be an enabler for those goals. I've come from architecture consultants background. That's a cross-functional, spend a lot of time on data. I extensively involved in the IT leadership and management roles to bring customer and business values together from strategy and concept to launch and operations. I have experience in driving technology transformations, including data as well. So I drove a few data transformations in my previous jobs, and even as a consultant and as a otherwise as well. Um, Transforming companies right from being data aware to data informed to data driven. So being through the journey, that's always an exciting journey, Trevor, if you start unlocking to see what data can offer to you to you, not just from the technology point of view but the business point of view, right? And unlocking how it unlocks new revenue streams, and how it helps you to understand your customer better. That's the part that excites me more.
Yeah,
So yeah, uh,
that's changed
I'm
over the
still.
years,
Yeah,
right?
sorry.
Right. That whole process of using data for really impactful, insightful information has changed, right? I remember back in the day when I started with data, it was all about just sticking in a SQL database somewhere, and you get access to the data that way. But presumably those projects you've worked on have been more about non-SQL. Would that be true, or were they still SQL structured data type?
That was a start. Right.
Okay.
SQL structured data was a start, and then the perspective has been changing very largely, right, or the past few years, I would say. So we see uh, the value in moving the data from structured to non-structured, so we can collate the data, bring that cohesiveness of the data. In other words, right, if you see data as a agile I'm not referring to the agile process here, but agility of the data. That is what is unlocking this new exciting journey, right? If you want, if you're aiming to, achieve the agility of the data, slightly have to start thinking beyond the structure, the part of the data, right? So
Yeah. Jake Programming asks, what industry was the data in that you worked with previously?
I'm sorry.
What industry was the data in?
All right. Well, I worked across the industries, but predominantly I was associated with media and entertainment industry and telco industries. So the
Yeah.
challenges are not different from any other industries, but I would be very, very curious to understand from your point of view as well, Trev, as I know that you are closely associated with financial industry.
Yeah, I do a lot of financial services. Every customer I deal with and have dealt with in the last 10 years, it's always been about a data challenge. And that data challenge in the financial services industry, to your point, is very, very similar across the board, right? I know with the financial services industry, there's a lot more focus on PII data and being able to protect it. So I know that a lot of the solutions we deal with is around obfuscation. And possibly being able to tokenize, but also reverse tokenize where need be, right? So if you needed to get back to, you want to hide who the user is, but if you needed to get back to a particular specific user, being able to reverse that tokenization was important for them. I also did, interestingly, before I came back to New Zealand, I worked in the UK. I worked with some of the gambling institutions over there, because obviously in the UK, Malta is where a lot of the gaming companies globally, base themselves because of the regulatory environment in Malta. And their one, again, massive amount of data, very driven to live. So it's really important for them to get access to live data. But also they had a massive regulatory responsibility around their users gambling, whether or not it was at an appropriate level, right? So that they had to identify, for example, problem gamblers or outliers within their environment. So their use cases were more, I think, if I compare like financial services, they focus more on privacy and security. And if I focus on the gaming ones that I dealt with a lot with, for them it was really focused on make sure the data is available to us live as much as possible, because they needed quick access to it to make decisions about what they called their trading. But at the end of the day, the technology they built it on was very, very similar, right? And I'm sure we'll talk a wee bit about the technology as part of this, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely, Trevor. We'll talk about the technology. I'm sure we'll get an opportunity to talk about the process as well, how AWS, enables their journey. But interesting, you mentioned about gaming industry. I also had experience working in the gaming industry. I provided architecture consulting services and strategic level as well. It is very interesting to see the the data that's available to them from the customer point of view is enormous, and unlocking the data, that's a huge potential. In terms of the security aspects that you mentioned, yeah, those cross-cutting concerns, I think they are similar. From my experience point of view, when I was working in the US, I was working in the retail industry as well, and here in New Zealand for the broadcasting, the media and entertainment and telco industries. So the security in terms of say PII or any other the customer data point of view, the security those concerns are similar, right? One of the things that I always pondered about is how you secure, or in other words, what are the compliance regulatory requirements around securing third-party data? I'm sure that's another topic that we are going into the details today, but I thought I would just throw it out there as a food for thought.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, sorry. So speaking of the telco and media and entertainment industries, right? As I was talking about some of the use cases, maybe I'll also add into this discussion a couple of use cases I've extensively worked on in the past. Some of our customers who have embarked on the data-driven journey from these industries are using the data not just for business reporting purposes. They use the data to enhance customer experience, as we briefly talked about earlier, unlock new revenue streams. Next best action or next best offer, that can be a classic example. Right? And automating repeatable processes is another key example. Making data-driven decision in purchasing content rights, that's one of the use cases that was very very predominant in media and entertainment industry. So mainly purchasing content rights driven by gaining insights into customers' content interrogation or demand. That we found is very rewarding. That's based on my previous experience.
So walk me through that one, mate. So they go and buy the rights to, I don't know, Rick and Morty as an example.
Mhm.
So what's the requirements they would have had for to protect that content?
Right. It's not about the protecting the content, but even making a decision to purchase the content. So there are various, uh, there are various opportunities to understand or gain insights into the customer's interrogation, meaning what customers are searching for at various platforms. May not just be the customer engagement channels of this particular organization, but reaching out to the other vendors and other companies, and what type of content the customers are interested in. And based on that content, you generate the demand, and based on the demand, you make a decision on purchasing the content rights. That is a very a common and a significant business case nowadays in the OTT and media industry.
Okay, gotcha. So you've got to understand your customer. So you got to have those insights into what your customer's interested in, so that you're making the correct content purchase. Because those are big investments, right? When you go and if you buy the content, like the entire Rick and Morty one, I could imagine it's quite expensive investment for the broadcaster.
Precisely, Trevor. Those are massive investments, and understanding the demographics of the customer and understanding their interests, from various platforms, right? So that is a key to unlock these potential opportunities.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the big, we did a survey earlier the year about employment within New Zealand, and we did ANZ, right? It was a
Right.
AWS survey, and one of the big areas that we saw a lot of roles out there. Obviously, cloud was massive, but the second big one was data, right? It's like data insight teams are pretty much popping up on well within every customer. So I could see you know, and of course, and then the third one was machine learning AI, right? But they're all kind of related. If you think about it, it's like if you're going to build this new big data platform, chances are you're not going to build it on prem. You're probably going to build it in the cloud. If you're going to have this data, you need the data team, so the data insights team, to be able to get access and get data out of it. And then, of course, one of the big use cases, once you've got your data sorted out, is AI ML, right? So when you look at the top three industries where people are massively in demand, where everybody's getting those big pay rises, it's all within areas that are related to data in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, precisely, Trevor. So yeah, just a touch on one point around the cloud and moving to the public cloud and leveraging the public cloud, and uh, some of the some of the initial thinking when I started this journey many years ago, public cloud journey. Actually, I should mention, uh, I first moved Tomcat servers into AWS in 2010. So, yeah. So that was my first experience. And then a few years back, right, when I was the strategy was to move to public cloud. One of the key challenges was security. Yeah. So that is, I think it's an interesting journey for financial industry as well. I'm sure that's key. However, one of the key highlights was whether the security was to enable the business or to control it. Right. So when we look at the embarking on this journey, we understand that the public cloud, the security of the data is in the hands of the customer. There are different levels of responsibility. So that is, well, that is in other words, it's no longer a concern to adopt to the public cloud for securing your data.
Yeah, that attitude's changed over the years for
Mhm.
sure. Someone has slighted you in chat, mate, and saying it sounds like you're an Oracle guy or were an Oracle guy. Isn't that the worst thing you could be called nowadays?
Well, I'm a cross-functional. I did come from a massive data background. I did migrate Oracle. I was the database administrator as well at some point in my life. So yeah, I'm not, well, I did use IBM AS400 as well. So I wouldn't call myself an Oracle guy or a SQL guy, but yeah, I've seen both structured and unstructured. I've used both structured and unstructured databases, and yeah, been there.
Let's talk about this concept of the
Sure.
data driven
Yeah.
organizations. First question I have is this a AWS concept or is this more of an industry concept when we talk about a data driven organization?
Hmm. I think it's more of an industry concept, but AWS has a very specific definition of it, and they have a specific framework and methodology to enable organizations to be data driven. Yeah. So, if I can talk a little bit more about that, Trev, what does data driven mean? Right. I think that's where we should start, maybe, to answer your question. Data driven, it's really a loaded phrase, isn't it, Trevor?
Yeah.
And if you ask 50 people what they think it means, you're going to get 50 different answers, I suppose. Yeah. As organizations are overwhelmingly recognizing that data is a key enabler of sustained innovation. Forbes recently published an article that said, quote, by making 10% more data accessible, typical Fortune 1000 company will see a $65 million increase in net income. That observation is profound, isn't it?
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah. So speaking of AWS, as you mentioned, AWS customers are using data to unlock new revenue streams. That's what we see across these trends, reducing costs and mitigating risks. So data is being used to create new customer experience, as we have just talked about, rather than just report on existing ones. Speaking of enriching customer experience, Formula One has redefined the fan experience through real-time insights on driver performance. So at AWS, we call these companies data-driven organizations. And uh, if you could please bring a slide. Yeah, sorry, in there. So data-driven organization. Please, maybe the previous one. Apologies. Um, we have defined it as an organization that harnesses data as an asset to drive sustained innovation and create actionable insights to supercharge the customer experience. That's a loaded answer. Yeah. But the key to it is treating data as a strategic asset. So you want to think in terms of, data product rather than a platform. So being data driven is essentially about creating momentum and change with data with a laser focus on enhancing your customers' experience. So, to your point, is it a AWS concept or general concept? I think it is a general concept, but what AWS brings into the table is a methodology, a use case driven framework. This framework has been built from the experience of helping hundreds of our customers. It brings together multiple components, including AWS Professional Services or ProServe, AWS Data Lab, AWS Machine Learning Solution Lab, prototyping, and migrating readiness programming, planning, and so forth. I'm sure we will dive a bit deeper into the details as we discuss.
Yeah, it's interesting. This concept I like, right? Particularly that the data is an asset. I remember back in the day when people started first talking about this one. Obviously, you can see I've got a bit of grey here, right? I've been around a while, but I remember when we first went to customers and started talking about, oh, data is the new black gold, right? It's the asset in the organization. It's like oil. It's like gold. It's like it's what you really need access to. There was a bit of resistance to that messaging at the beginning. They're like, oh, you're just trying to sell us something. That's a marketing term, blah, blah, blah. But nowadays, when I go and talk to organizations and say, look, your data is your asset, right? That's where all the value is. I think people have woken up to it. And now people are willing to hear that conversation. Would you agree, Sam?
I agree with you, Trev, because yeah, it does sound like a sales terminology, but uh, I'm a technology. I don't sell anything, right? For me, that has been very key to pursue data as an asset. I could clearly recall a conversation I had with a CEO of a large enterprise in New Zealand a few years ago. That was about 6 or 7 years ago. They had a large amounts of data. My first uh, my first statement to him about the data was, why do not we see data as an asset? So it was not coming from a sales pitch. It was coming, being a technologist, being an architect, that's what the first came to our mind, that why do not we see data as asset? Why do not we unlock that potential by seeing the data as an asset, right?
Yeah, no, completely agree.
So maybe I'll talk a little bit about what the program entails. Yeah, entail the DT program that AWS offers.
Okay,
Trevor, that be of interest?
that's good.
Okay. So to set the context for framework, maybe I'll start with from the customer lens. Yeah. So I'll start with the common challenges I hear from my customers. I'm sure you do too, Trev, from the financial industry. So some of the challenges are understanding how being data driven can help deliver outcomes, how to identify and prioritize new initiatives, how to build compelling use cases. These are practical problems. How to define and shape an integrated business strategy, how to evolve skills and technology foundations, and how to ensure compliance and data privacy, as you talked about earlier, Trevor, governance and security. So, meaning being data driven is not just a technical challenge, but also an organizational one. Mark Squaz, he's an enterprise strategist at AWS. He observes that, quote, to be data driven, an organization must think differently about how it makes business decisions and how it interacts with customers. Then he continues, it is a commitment to the value of data, a kind of organizational humility that says the data knows better than we do. The statement he made on commitment to the value of data, I found it profound. S- What I was highlighting here is that successful organizations understand that the transformation to becoming data driven requires more than just technology. It requires a combination of mindset, people, process, and technology in order to build and sustain momentum. So essentially, it requires executive sponsorship, cross functional participation, data related use cases with broad ambition, desire to take a successful minimum viable product into production. I think that's a nice segue into talk about the framework. Is there any comments that you want to add to that, Trevor, at this stage?
Yeah, so I think the you talk about what you need to be successful. One of those being executive buy-ins. I don't know how many projects you've seen go off the rails over the years, mate, but I've seen a fair few myself, and the executive buy-in is always the one that to me is the biggest risk of a project going awry. I worked with a bank, not wasn't really recent, but not too far in the past, where they had the data team that was trying to. They understood the importance of data, so the data team was like, right, we need to be able to get access to this stuff. We need to be able to get access to it in real time. Let's try and push forward, with the appropriate internal technology to be able to support this. And we've got the people and the data team, so we've got people in process. We just need the technology to support us. So they were pushing through to try and put a new solution in place, but because they didn't have executive buy-in, trying to get approvals. Obviously, it's financial services, right? So any type of new system, new technology has to go through a security and governance process. Trying to get it through that security and governance process literally took them 18 months. And because they didn't have exec buy-in and exec commitment to it, it just ended up floundering, and they really struggled to make progress. So that executive buy-in, I think, is really important when you try and re-architect your entire data platform.
Yeah, precisely, Trevor. I had similar experience as well. When there's no exec buy-in, the first question especially the CFOs, for example, in my previous experiences, they asked me was, what is the business value here? And the CEO asked, what is the business problem you're addressing? You have this great technical competencies in terms of the data capability, but what exact business problem you're addressing? I think that's a nice segue into our topic as well, because I will be briefly touching as part of the framework. There is a process we'll talk about that is a working backwards, starting with the customer or starting with the business problem and working towards the design. So yeah, I couldn't agree more with you on that. So maybe I'll use this concept of data flywheel that is on the screen here to describe our approach to innovation, Trevor. Yeah.
Cool.
So our approach to creating value anchors to the data flywheel that you see here on the right. This is a foundational tenet for AWS DTE, or data to everything program. Data driven everything. My apologies. So with the introduction of the AWS Data Driven Everything program, AWS will partner with our customers to move faster and with greater precision using a working backwards approach to address people, not just technology, but to address people, process, and technology related considerations. The program will leverage specific use cases to jumpstart your data flywheel to create value-based outcomes throughout the entire process of building a data platform. So in case if any of you of our audiences are wondering what working backwards mean, it's an AWS version of design thinking. It's a process we use at AWS and with our customers as well to start with the customer and work backwards. It helps to uh, paint the vision, visualize the end result of the final product before you have even started to develop it. So the outcome of a working backward or workshop with the business stakeholders, technology stakeholders, and so forth, and all the relevant stakeholders would be to generate a white paper and PR FAQ, meaning press release and frequently asked questions. I'll talk about it briefly. The white paper will entail a summary of the findings, a use case details, the challenges and solutions of the working backward workshop, and a recommended approach. PR FAQ, on the other side, is a hypothetical press release that might be written when the new product is released. So it includes the proposal for the product idea and a list of potential internal and external questions about the product, such as why, as Trevor, as you have rightly pointed earlier, why, what is the business problem it's addressing? Who are the customers? What is the return on investment? Those specific questions, right? Do you have any comments on that, Trevor, on
Yeah.
working backwards before I press on with the flywheel?
So I know we'll talk more about the PRFAQ and coming up. But so this is a specific framework we could take to our customers to say, right, you have a problem. Let's work back from your customer requirements and see if we can define what that problem is and how to solve it. Right, that's essentially what the framework does. But it's a methodical approach that we use time and time again for customers out in the world. Yeah.
Precisely, Trevor. We'll get an opportunity to dive a little bit deeper into that framework as well shortly. But coming back to the flywheel, I'm using this concept to describe our approach to innovation. So for the first turn of the flywheel, we start small to provide initial value. We collect feedback, add more features, and then we repeat. So each repetition is another turn of the flywheel, and each turn brings more customer delight and value based on the feedback loop. So the first turn of the flywheel is often the hardest, as you would imagine. So the initial working backward workshop is focused on defining what the first turn looks like. We call it MVP. And my apologies again. I need to keep the lights on. um, so we call it a minimum viable product, something that can be developed in the first 60 days. So our flywheel starts with the creation of data-driven product that focus on compelling business challenges and opportunities. What do you mean by data-driven product? Is that they are data-enabled offerings or data-enabled solutions used by customers, used internally by other employees, or even processes that provide business capabilities and value. For example, consumer segmentation and targeting model, that can be a data product, a data-driven product, if you will. Forecasting optimization algorithm, personalized customer recommendations are next best action. So the data product is going to drive the customer experience, and based upon the experience, we will get feedback that will collect and store as additional data and use it to inform the next iteration of your product, or even new products to continually enhance your customer's experience. So when customers subscribe to this approach, they will build incrementally and demonstrate value, all grounded in real life feedback. This essentially describes the flywheel effect. You're
Yeah.
building products that add immediate value while laying the paywords or leveraging the already laid paywords of your data and analytics foundation. Yeah.
Yeah, I love this flywheel, right? I've worked a lot of my financial service experience out of London was working for fintech startups, and within startups, you had to have this flywheel. This is essentially, when people ask me which startup was more successful and why was one startup more successful than the other, the startups that nailed this flywheel, those were the ones that were more successful. So the ones that could continuously iterate and improve their product, making it better and better every time. And, when I look at this flywheel, the one area that I find most organizations struggle with is, yes, you've got to have access to the data, but the feedback one's really important, right? So if you build something, and particularly with a startup, you're always iterating, you're always trying to improve. So you go and build something, you take it to the market, but you've got to get that feedback. So if you don't collect that feedback data and then you don't make it available to the rest of the teams, then the flywheel just collapses, right? And you can't pick up speed, and you can't keep on moving faster and faster. And I see there's a question in the chat there from HTML Professional saying, is this communicated down to the dev? Well, the key concept here is that data has to be open up to the entire organization, right? So the dev needs to be able to get access to that feedback mechanism, which is going to be in the form of data. So the dev needs access to that data so that they can then make decisions, right? Then they can, decide what's going to occur in the next sprint and what the new features, that they're going to commit to. And I still feel, and I don't know for you, mate, but with customers that I work with, I still feel that that's the weakest link at the moment. It's great to have good data, but you don't get good data unless you're getting some of that feedback from the customers. And I'm not sure there's good mechanisms out there at the moment to support getting that feedback from customers and therefore feeding it into the rest of the data, the data flywheel. Unless you know of anything, you've come across anything that helps with that?
Well, there's nothing in particular I've come across, Trevor, but this data-driven, the program will enable that thinking.
Which is good. Yeah, that's the important part, right? If you're not thinking about this flywheel, there's just so many places you can fall down. But if you're actively thinking about it, then you're going to think, okay, right, customer experience. What do we have to? What's the people, technology, and process around it? Feedback. What's the people, technology, and process? And like I say, those are the areas I think are probably a bit weak in most organizations that I go into.
Yeah, precisely, Trevor. I couldn't agree more with you on that. Also, regarding the feedback that you mentioned about, right? As you get feedback from our customers, you can keep and or accelerate the things or techniques that are working, right? And for those things that don't hit the mark, you can adjust or even stop them, and you aren't stuck with the technical debt, right? So that is that's another key thing I've observed. So the real interesting part here is that from the cloud point of view, AWS point of view, it allows our flywheel to accelerate because we can now more efficiently and cost effectively experiment and innovate with the new technology and techniques. So I thought I would mention that as well from the AWS point of view. Maybe I'll just summarize the flywheel. So it's all about creating the momentum, creating alignment between business and technology teams, and building incrementally. Isn't that, Trevor?
Sounds good. Yeah, you nail that. You're doing well.
Precisely. Yeah. So maybe we can talk a little bit about the workshop as we talked about as part of the methodology and the structure of the workshop, Trevor.
Cool.
Sure. So if the motto of data-driven everything is think big, start small, scale fast. I like that. If you anchor to the phrase think big to establish a North Star vision on the experiences that you want to create, start small to take those first steps into your test and learn journey, and then scale fast based upon feedback and results, you will see the flywheel begin to turn and deliver more delightful experiences to your customers. So we can think of it as a modern technology complemented with modern methodology. So that is a both technology and business problem. We have solved it now. So coming back to the DTE framework, Trevor, it consists of 4 unique modular workshops. That's a mindset, as you see here at the bottom line here, mobilize, people, and process technology. You might be wondering what the vision is all about at the top, listed at the top. While vision isn't a specific workshop, this represents a collection of ways in which you can get inspired and get industry examples, best practices, trends, and hands-on demos and labs. Coming to the mindset, it helps align business and technology stakeholders on the type of data-driven cultures you want to build, identify business priorities, associated use cases, and outcome metrics that could be positively impacted with data and analytics. So this is a great place to start if you don't know exactly where to start. However, you can start with any of these workshops. You don't necessarily need to start with a mindset, but if you don't know exactly where to start, I would suggest that's a great place to start. In terms of the Mobilize, it is focused on building the muscle between business and IT. I think that's essential, Trevor, isn't it? To accelerate the first turn of the flywheel. So we first select a single use case with meaningful and priority for the business. For example, churn reduction or increase cross sell or next best offer. Uh, and then we identify business and technology stakeholders together who have vested interest in the use case to collaborate and ideate. As part of this, we introduce Amazon's working backwards methodology to create a vision, identify the first data product or minimum viable product, if you will, that you will build to test and learn with rich feedback loop in place to measure value. And then if we move on to people and process, that predominantly focuses on identifying the right organization and process model to support your modern data strategy. And technology, that workshop helps you identify technology foundation that can scale with organizations' business objectives. The goal of the technology workshop is predominantly to identify a conceptual architecture build. Uh, to build around the data value chain, such as the collecting data, storing the data, discovering the data, assessing the data, consuming the data, and so forth, along with the training needs to consider. So that is a um, the it is a high level view. Haven't even started diving deeper into any of these workshops, Trevor. So
Who do we
what
to go in and do this stuff, mate? Is it
Mhm.
is it other essays like you and myself, or is it our ProServe team? Who actually
Mhm.
goes in and do these workshops?
We have specialists who do this. We have teams who do that. SS like you and me, we are deeply involved in these processes, and we have digital innovation teams who can help with working backwards. Recently, I had the opportunity to work with the head of the digital innovation at AWS to run these work backwards sessions with some of our customers. That was extremely rewarding. Rewarding the sessions. The customer was found those sessions extremely valuable in terms of the outcome. So yeah, to answer your question, it's a multifold answer. So
Cool.
so how are you doing on time, Trevor?
Yeah, we've still got about 15 minutes, so you're not doing too bad.
Sure, sure. Because I was just wondering if you have any specific thoughts on your customers' point of view. Uh, why
Yeah,
you see
I,
these questions such as why to become data-driven organization
yeah.
and some challenges and
To be honest, I think people get the flywheel, right? So whenever I
Mhm,
go to a customer and um, talk about the flywheel and how that's what we use internally to help us innovate, right? And let's be honest, Amazon's one of the most innovative companies out there, right? We've been around for a while. We've got a lot of successful products. So when I go and talk to a customer and say, "Hey, this is what we use for our flywheel, our concept to help us innovate," people buy into that, right? Because they see how successful it can be. I guess the first question I get from them is, does it matter what technology we're currently using? I know I was picking on Oracle earlier about, is it, the fact that we've got Oracle databases or Microsoft databases or wherever our data stores does that matter?
mhm.
What's your thoughts on that?
Mm. Yeah, that is more from the technology lens, right? Yeah, the technology point of view, yes, it requires some transformation, but from data driven, I wouldn't, as we talked about earlier, it's not just a technology challenge; it's an organization one. So I would rather start with the business. What's the business problem? And then work backwards. And whether it's Oracle or Microsoft or SQL Server, I think that the, the the relevance may not be significant uh, in terms of onboarding this data driven strategy.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's one of the things that people get scared about, right? If they've got a massive investment in Oracle, as an example, we're not going in there and telling them to rip it out, because we're not going in and say you have to rip this out to be able to be innovative. That's absolutely not the case, right? If all your data is on that platform, all we want to do is make sure that we're plugging it into this process, so you can still keep your existing data platform without having to do a major transformation program. Some of the requirements might require that you transform some of it, right? So there might be some transformation there, but it's not a complete, oh, you have to completely change your platform. So certainly not what we're saying, even though I was taking a dig at the Oracle boys earlier on, or the Microsoft ones. Reality is you already have some technology. We just need to be able to make sure we can fit it into the flywheel, and help you iterate faster and innovate, right?
Hmm. And to add to that, Trevor, it's not completely an uncommon question either. Because a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a head of data of a large enterprise. He was referring to that question because they're using Oracle for some business applications, and reporting, or the business intelligence reporting straight off the Oracle. So the question was, with this data-driven thinking, exactly as you have rightly pointed, as you have pointed earlier, the question was whether that would require moving away from Oracle. But the answer was not really, right? So as you said, you continue using Oracle. Sorry, I got to keep my lights on. So continue using Oracle, whatever the application databases are that you have. But this is about bringing that cohesive view of your data. So to provide that, for example, an organization has a multiple customer engagement channels, and you have, for example, Oracle may be serving one of those channels and SQL may be serving another channel. But the data driven is about bringing that cohesive view of the customer from all these channels. So they from the business point of view, they will not make any siloed decisions. Rather, they look at the broader single view of the customer perspective and understand the customer insights from all these fronts. So that is, and using, of course, leveraging machine learning capabilities, artificial intelligence capabilities, AWS Amazon SageMaker, and so forth. That is, it's a vast potential in there. So,
No, agreed.
so just maybe a quick question. You still have 12 minutes. What do you think is preventing companies from becoming data-driven enterprises, if if there are any?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think it's that they don't quite understand how to get on that journey, right? How to get to where they. 'Cause again, if you put that flywheel up in front of any exec that I work with, and I'm sure the same with you, you put that up in front of them, they all understand it, right? And they all like, yes, we want to get there, but they don't quite understand the steps to get there. So that's what I like about this workshop that we offer. Is We've seen it with thousands of customers. We have on the screen here the Andy Jassy talk from reInvent a couple of years ago. I'll put the link in. There you go. I'll put the link into chat for that video. But he talks about the importance of the key stakeholder management you need, the top-down aggressive goals, etc., etc. And he talks about how to get there. But this workshop is the roadmap to try and get you to that data-driven everything. Because look, you tell me, mate. Every exec I talk to, they want to go on this journey. They want to get there. They want to be in a position where they can get on that flywheel and iterate fast. They just don't know how to, and that's probably giving them that knowledge is going to help. Secondly, and this would be another big one, I think, their current operating model, how their teams are structured. One of the key for this flywheel to work, I think you have to structure your team around what we call a product enterprise, where you're more focused on products, right? So if I'm the owner, let's say I'm the owner of, online banking, all right, the consumer online banking. So I own that as a product. I need to be able to make decisions about that product and the path that product's going to take when it comes to innovation. I need to be able to make decisions on that, and my team needs to be able to iterate and fix whatever whatever it is around that product. So how am I going to make those decisions about what I'm going to change? I'm going to go to my data. I'm going to look for that data insights. I'm going to then say, okay, this is the feedback we've had. This is the prioritized features that we're going to want to put in place. And now my team can go and implement it. So one of the big drawbacks or hang-ups I see with a lot of organizations is that final step, where you can have a data-driven organization where you've got all this, at your fingertips, access to all of this great information about what we should be doing and how we should be doing it, but then trying to implement it becomes a barrier because your operating model doesn't support it, right? So that seems to be the second thing that I think customers struggle with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, precisely, Trevor. I couldn't agree more on that. Maybe if I can just add just one more comment to it. One of the trends I see when I discuss with customers on this is that the perception is that that's a massive upfront investment, but it is not. So you can start small with a small investment. In other words, in terms of the commitment, right? It doesn't have to be a massive upfront commitment. You can start small, and then you can scale out as you generate value out of that approach, right?
Yeah, no, completely agree. It's that back to that question we said, right? If you've got Oracle database, don't rip it out on day one, right? Keep it there, and think about the specific project you want to try this flywheel on, and then move forward. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and also there was a survey by Business Wire. I don't have the link with me. I'd be happy to share the stats. I'll just read out the survey stats. It says, while 99% of blue chip companies are investing in data initiatives, only 24% have successfully created data-driven organization. 92% of companies cite culture, people, process, organization, and change management as the biggest impediment. So so this process that we have just talked about, that will address exactly that, that challenge, isn't it, Trevor?
Yeah. So have you done one of these workshops with your customer, mate? And if so, what sort of timeline is it? Are we talking, is this a commitment of days from the customer, or weeks, or months? What's your thoughts?
Well, let me start with this, right? In terms of the workshop, as the first, if you go back to the data flywheel, the first turn, the general expectation is for that to take 60 days to 90 days.
60 to 90
identify, including the workshops and including identifying a minimal viable product and building it, 60 days to 90 days. And then, of course, it depends on how fast you want to scale, right? Because the first turn is the key.
Yeah,
that is the hard one.
It's just getting that momentum up, and then once you get that momentum, because you've got to solve for all of these different boxes that we have on the screen, right? So the customer experience, the feedback, the data, the experiment, the innovation. So putting the people, process, and technology in place for each of those, it's more difficult. But once you've got it in place, then that's when you start to accelerate.
Yeah, precisely, Trevor.
Excellent. Well, listen, mate, this has been really interesting. I know we're coming up to our time here. You will be joining the LinkedIn group, right? So that if the people do have any follow-up questions, they can contact you via the LinkedIn group.
Oh, I'd be glad to. I would love to. I'll join the LinkedIn group
I'm disappointed you're not in
today.
already, mate. What's going on? The rest of us are in there. We'll definitely get you in, mate. And listen, everybody, the LinkedIn group is on the screen there on the technical community. If you just search AWS New Zealand Technical Community on LinkedIn, you'll also be able to find it. It's a nice, easy location. I will throw it into the chat as well, just so everybody's got access to it. Give me 1 sec here. There we go. And we'll throw that into chat. So we'd love to see you over there. One of the things we do with the LinkedIn group as well is we do ask, questions about, what you'd like to see on future content. So if you're interested in, us covering a specific topic, you can contact us via that LinkedIn group as well, and we'll make sure that we can take that into account. So that's pretty much our time. Listen, Sam, really appreciate you coming on today, mate, and talking about data-driven everything. It's been really interesting.
Thank you very much, Trevor. It's absolutely an honor to be on this show and talk about data-driven everything. It's, as I mentioned, it's really close to me. So yeah, I hope our audience they found something useful out of this discussion, and happy to take any follow-up discussions or Q&A. I'll join the group, the LinkedIn group, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
Good stuff. Cheers, Sam. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Trevor.